Hi all, Frida Vazel here. Today I'm going to do a reaction video watching this video on Instagram that someone recently sent to me. I am going to play it for you and then maybe we can talk about it a little bit.
On her wedding day, the woman has her hair shaved off and is covered with a white veil. She marries a man she's only met for 3 minutes. After this eerie wedding is over, Isti's nightmare has just begun. From now on, she must live with a headscarf, her only task being to bear children, and she's not allowed to meet her husband during her period and a few days around it. 15 days later, she goes to the bathhouse to clean her body thoroughly. Isti does as required, even cleaning her fingernails well. After that, she still needs to pass the inspection of professionals to enter the holy water for prayer and then return to her husband. However, since Isti hasn't conceived in a year, her husband tells his mother everything. His mother gets extremely angry and blames Isti for not fulfilling her wifely duties. Facing her controlling mother-in-law and weak husband, she chooses to leave this place alone to seek a brand new life of her own.
Where to begin? First of all, it starts with on her wedding day without any information that this is a Netflix fiction, fair to say fiction show that is very loosely based on Deborah Feldman's memoir Unorthodox and is titled the same. So it is presented here as if it's a fact. And then goes on to, of course, pick the most sensationalist moments of the typical having left the fold narrative arc, which involves the arranged marriage, which involves having how sex is taught, which involves the focus on having children, and the mikvah, of course. These are all highlights. You want to make a bestseller about leaving the fold? Here, I got the ingredients. They involve everything that's in this 40 or 60-second video, however long it is, very short video. It, of course, has the dramatic footage of the mitzvah tans, everything, so on and so forth. It contains massive number of serious misrepresentation, from the fact the couple only meets for 3 minutes. Why 3? What compelled them to use 3? To the fact that a woman's purpose is only to bear children, which is something that really bothers me as a feminist, that secular society, which holds itself up as progressive in women's causes, will take women's lives of other cultures and reduce them to, oh, these women are just baby making machines, which is, while this is a video just meant for clicks, that idea that religious women who have many children are nothing but baby-making machines is something that is seriously believed and propagated in the secular society, and is unfathomable to me that people who believe they are feminists would then speak of women in language so degrading, so dehumanizing, so removing them of any agency or of any vibrancy in life, that they give away their tremendous biases against women who don't live by their standards, and who in making a life in a different set of priorities have then no value. It's not what women in the Hasidic community are, because women in the Hasidic community are complicated and have complicated lives just like in any community. It's what women are to secular viewers who cannot imagine anything more but their own limited biases, and their limited biases are the opposite of feminists. It's the opposite of seeing as women as rich, complicated humans. It sees women who don't fulfill the need to show themselves as liberated to be useless. I mean, it's just incredible to me. The head covering, the mikvah also. Let's take a look again at the mikvah. By the way, they're using, I'm going to show some of the other footage. They're using footage here of this groom who, again, looks the most depressed. He doesn't look like he's praying. He looks like he's the most depressed groom. Of course, they open with a head shaving scene, because it's also, that was a scene that in this show was also created with as much drama as possible. Now, I know personally people who had a hard time with head shaving. I had, in some times in my life, a terribly hard time with head shaving, and I know people for whom it's a non-issue. It's very complicated, the issue of head shaving. But again, the context in which the story is often told for outsiders, and I think this video epitomizes it, is to take the most extreme examples and dramatize it. And likewise with this groom who's looking down and so sad and half asleep and so disengaged. A big part of the problem with what's happening now in media making, and this I know because I'm a media maker, is nowadays very often they'll make these videos with AI, and that also allows them to, like a fake voice to narrate, and no one is culpable, no one is reliable. You know, if I say things that are off the wall, I'll be walking in Williamsburg and people will say, what have you done? Like, why have you lied? But if it's AI generated and AI created, you can do anything, you can say anything, and what is there for the creator at stake? Nothing. All they get is views, clicks, and money. It's absurd. And by the way, it's pronounced esti, not isti, to the AI or the AI-like person. And again, a nightmare.
From now on, she must live with a headscarf, her only task being to bear children. And she's...
The footage especially is dramatic. And I think this is a scene from the bride teacher teaching her about sex, which was also in Unorthodox, done very dramatically.
Her husband during her period and
yeah,
a
that's
few
what
days
this is.
around it. 15 days later, she goes to the bathhouse to clean her body thoroughly. Isti does as required, even cleaning her fingernails well. After that, she still needs to pass the inspection of professionals to enter the holy water for prayer and then return to her husband.
So the mikveh is its own story. Someone inspects the woman in the mikveh before she goes in, make sure that she's cleaned herself properly. And again, obviously the language here is very tilted to dramatize and to enrage.
However, since Isti hasn't conceived in a year, her husband tells his mother everything.
Something that the show does, and it's not just this video takes what the show did badly, which is tell a story of a Hasidic woman who leaves, and does it even worse. But something the show does is make it sound like a woman with infertility issues is always the one who is blamed, and it is all turned on her. And I'm sure there are horrible mother-in-laws. I'm sure there are horrible stories. I'm sure there are instances in which, I mean, in any instance where someone has struggles, I'm sure there are people who blame themselves, who blame others. And in the Deborah Feldman story, she has what I think is called vaginismus. She's unable to have sex because it is a condition in which there's like the muscle doesn't relax, as far as I understand. And so obviously that would be a context in which there would be blame. It makes sense for people to I think that is like human nature, for her to feel to blame and for others to blame. And there's an element in Deborah Feldman's book that we see that. But here it's, of course, portrayed as if in all cases when a woman isn't a childbearing vehicle, she's immediately blamed for not having fulfilled her wifely duty, which is like so absurd. If a couple suffers infertility, there is enormous community apparatus to try to help them and to guide them through their infertility issues. And charity, which is one of the most endearing parts of this community, is what people pride themselves on. It could become gossipy, and it's not always a perfect mechanism, which is anywhere with philanthropies and charity organizations, but it is ultimately a well-meant organization, and really it comes from a place of kindness to help couples that struggle get through this. And the way it's portrayed in the secular media, often in these sensationalized portrayals like here, is like all that people do is like blame a woman who can't get pregnant because she hasn't done her wifely duty.
His mother gets extremely angry and blames Isti for not fulfilling her wifely duties. Facing her controlling mother-in-law and weak husband, she chooses to leave this place alone to seek a brand new life of her own.
And that's where it ends, to seek a brand new life of her own. And it's the sheitel scene, the taking the wig off scene. My son really gets a kick out of the sheitel scene. He always is like, when in the next show about Orthodox Jews are we going to see a sheitel scene? Because it's so predictable, so tropey. Always this big scene of taking off the wig and that reveal, which seems to tickle secular audiences to no end. Like, how is it that Hasidic media can be so rich and they never seem tempted to have a sheitel scene, but secular content creators can't go one project without doing a sheitel scene, one project on Hasidic Jews without making it a sheitel scene. and it ends there, but the actual show continues in Berlin, where Esti finds liberation, which is so offensive to me, and I think offensive to Hasidic Jews who are descendants of Holocaust survivors, for a German television production crew to make a story in which they portray Hasidic Jews as the oppressors and Germans as the liberators is incredible chutzpah. And to think that this show was applauded, was considered some kind of amazing breakthrough, some positive thing, when it actually, I think, has, we might wonder, like, is it some kind of German guilt to reverse the narrative? Is it some kind of what is happening that we are even accepting this kind of narrative where the dark, drab, oppressive place is New York's Jewish community, and the bright, accepting place where Esti has great career opportunities. She gets accepted to an amazing school of music and arts, and even though she has very little skill, and she immediately makes a ton of friends, and she even has a great lover, her sex life is immediately fantastic, and she's even on the beach looking and feeling amazing, all of that. And she's homeless, and no one molests her, no one takes advantage of her, everyone instead brings her inside. All of these things are like this Berlin perfection utopia created by a German team, and it's all part of what I think is narrative making to a Western audience that doesn't challenge, that doesn't seek nuance, that seeks to entertain and reinforce prejudices. And I think that's the opposite of art. That is propaganda. That's the opposite of learning to understand and empathize, because it is reaffirming biases. It's the opposite of like challenging ourselves, which I think is what media should do. And it's like an easy, sloppy slob, like junk food in media. And it's, I think, in my own work, I feel it's very important to challenge that. When I criticized Unorthodox when it first came out, I got so much hate mail. I'd never experienced anything like it. People would tell me, literally would write to me to tell me to shut up, would write to me to tell me horrible things about myself, and that I had no right to say anything, even though I went through a very similar journey. I have lived a really hard life, and the people who wrote to me had not been on this journey. So I felt entitled to say how I saw it, and yet people who had not lived on this journey felt entitled to tell me I had no right to speak, but they had a right to speak. So this is a dangerous subject, which clearly I'm very animated about, and I have said what I think, and I've continued to do my work for a long time because I believe in humanizing. It's funny because it all brings us back to the scary world of anti-Semitism, which is something I've inherited and is in my bones. It's not just anti-Semitism, it's hatred, it's othering. And I've always believed that the antidote to othering is to challenge ourselves. And stories like these, which I know for a not knowing audience can feel empathetic, and I understand what audiences who don't know more get out of it. I think it's still very, very important to allow for the criticism of it, to allow to understand where these shows are pure entertainment and propaganda, in order to make sure that there isn't this kind of othering and this dangerous creating of stereotypes and narratives about the other unchallenged. Thanks for watching. I look forward to reading your comments.